it's time to rank the strongest curse techniques in sorcery history. To start off nice and simple, Gojo's Limitless is ranked 1. The simple fact that he flexed on Sukuna stating, "I'm glad my technique is significantly better than Shrine," it's a no-brainer. Limitless, being an innate technique of the Gojo clan, gives absolute control over space at an atomic level, allowing Gojo to develop new abilities. No one in the sorcery world would be able to bypass the neutral form of Limitless called Infinity without using domain amplification, entering a domain battle, or using a nullification technique like Angels. However, you're now dealing with a person that can kill you only with his punches thanks to them being laced with blue. This made sorcerers as strong as Yuta and Hakari vomit in a single punch, and can even kill the disaster curses like Jogo confirmed. Heck, even Nanami stated every attack is a critical hit, so Gojo is incomparable. Sukuna admitted he had to make a risky plan to get rid of the technique, adapting to it just for him to win. Gojo makes his Limitless even more powerful by keeping it active at all times, which is possible due to his 6 eyes. But on top of an already impregnable defense, Gojo can use Limitless in an offensive way with blue, red, and hollow purple, which is an imaginary technique that can one-shot the likes of Mahoraga and kill someone as powerful as Sukuna. But with that, we can comfortably put Takaba also in this list behind Gojo, as Comedian was stated to rival his technique. It can make anything in the user's imagination into reality. It also has the power of soul resonance, affecting the complete existence of a person. Therefore, reverse curse technique won't be effective or outright impossible if you don't know the contours of the soul. Kenjaku stated that 1,000 years of experience was useless against Takaba, as the curse techniques and strategies he's learned over those years would have no effect against Comedian. This is proof enough that this curse technique can also defeat Gojo and Sukuna, as Kenjaku said if he didn't play by the rules of Manzai, he would lose. The only reason Takaba can't straight up find it funny to kill someone outright is because his technique revolves around what he finds hilarious, but since he doesn't like killing, he lost to Kenjaku, showcasing that the only weakness of this technique is the curse user's imagination and humor. Give this technique to someone with a dark sense of comedy, then it's game over. Takaba could even survive explosions, save people's lives like Hana, and do death-defying feats once his technique is active. This is all without learning the fundamentals of curse energy and being a sorcerer for only a few months, which means Comedian is outrageously broken if harnessed to its maximum power. And to top it off, Takaba easily defeated a special grade curse in one attack as a truck, and that was a joke. But speaking of cursed spirits, Geto's manipulation of them is also top tier and deserves to be in the strongest 10. Kenjaku said it best, this technique can take over an entire country. He even had some vengeful spirits that come with their own domain expansions on top of the cursed womb. Kenjaku even had Kuruushi who participated in the culling game. Each cursed spirit can be evolved into a grade 1, just via his power level being imbued in them, and they can take on the likes of Choso. There is no limit to the number of cursed spirits that can be owned via this technique. For example, by the time Geto was 26 years old, he already owned 6,462 curses. Kenjaku explained in the Shibuya incident to Yuji and the others that he believes the main strength of cursed spirit manipulation is the high variation of moves at his disposal. He possesses numerous cursed spirits semi-grade 1 and higher, where he can release more when an opponent figures out how to counter just one. He even claimed that Geto could have defeated Yuta if he didn't divide the forces for the night parade of 100 demons. On top of that, in the aftermath of the Shibuya incident, he released millions of spirits that Yuta and Rika had to deal with, and then upon death, all these spirits get released on the opponent. So if you're not someone insane, it's a death sentence. So at the end of the day, no wonder the team had to sneak attack Kenjaku just to get rid of him with Yuta, as they literally confirmed in chapter 269. However, cursed spirit manipulation also has a maximum technique. Uzumaki combines all available cursed spirits in the user's arsenal into one singular entity, and it fires a blast of super condensed cursed energy towards the opponent. Even a tiny Uzumaki was able to create a massive hole through Yuki, who is another special grade sorcerer. In addition, cursed techniques are extracted and kept by the user, like we see when Kenjaku stole Mahito's technique. That is why cursed spirit manipulation is the sole reason Geto was put into special grade, and someone as self-absorbed as a young Gojo, who found everyone trash in comparison to himself, considered Geto and himself as equally strong. But speaking of controlling a massive army, an honorable mention would be Principal Yaga's Curse Corpse technique, which can amass an entire army of cursed corpses with its own sentience. For example, Panda was born completely conscious and possessed 3 cores. Each core possesses unique traits, allowing him to switch between them and alter his physical shape at will. Within 3 months' time, the cursed corpse will also gain the ability to replenish its own cursed energy. So the man can literally create his own army, mixing souls together, and that's why he was considered a special grade, with Jujutsu Society being so afraid like pussies against him that they ordered his execution and he died. But another technique that can create a literal army is the 10 Shadows. It was a technique said to rival the likes of our #1 spot, Limitless, where hundreds of years ago both users lost their lives in a death battle. It gives the user the ability to control shadows, being able to move inside it and surprise their opponents with sneak attacks, which was even effective against special grades such as Hanami, Gojo, and Sukuna. They can also store weapons inside of it like a freaking backpack. However, we get to see the true power of this technique through the king, who used it in its entirety to defeat Yoruzu, another Heian era sorcerer who ranked amongst the strongest at the time. This technique allows the control of 10 superpowered Shikagamis, including the strongest, Mahoraga. Not only is this Shikagami strong, keeping up with Gojo, but its adapting ability is a menace, as he can adapt to any curse technique and domain expansion, rendering your entire arsenal useless within a few spins, and can create complete counters to it. Sukuna was able to develop a new technique called World Cutting Slash, using Mahoraga's model, which of course killed Satoru freaking Gojo. Each Shikagami has various abilities ranging from offensive, diversions, one-shot capabilities, and even healing through reverse curse technique. So it's essentially having 10 different powers in one technique. And what makes it even more powerful is its use in Chimera Shadow Garden, which increases the potency of the shadows by 120% and allows multiple Shikagami of the same type to be summoned. This means when mastered, more than one Mahoraga could be used at the same time via domain, whilst dealing with 9 other Shikagami that are attacking you with status effects that will leave you overwhelmed. Anti-domain techniques would only get rid of the sure hit effect, but the 10 shadows doesn't even require that to be effective, since the Shikagami are living creatures. And let's say even if the user's Shikagami do perish in battle and you defeat them, their powers can be inherited to others with totality, making them essentially immortal and stronger. Realistically, Potential Man had the power to become the strongest sorcerer of this generation alongside Gojo. But another broken curse technique that deserves to be on the top 10 list is Idol Transfiguration, capable of one-shotting any sorcerer regardless of their status. Now, with a few touches, he can transform their opponent's soul entirely, which in turn transform their body, essentially killing anyone. Mahito can also transform his own body, capable of making weapons out of his limbs, making clones of himself, and various other things, such as creating the polymorphic isomers who scaled to grade 2 sorcerers and were capable of even hurting Todo, which is an above average sorcerer by the way. This curse technique is so strong strong that it can even be used for healing, regardless if the sorcerer has reverse curse technique, and it can ignore the conditions set by heavenly restriction like we see Mahito do with Mekomaru. The only defense against this technique is to be able to perceive the contours of the soul and defend it by using curse energy, or by healing your own soul with RCT, which 99.99% of sorcerers cannot even do. Things get even worse with the domain expansion sure hit effect, making Mahito's win a close guarantee. This allows him to transfigure the souls without needing any physical contact, and as Nanami described, the experience of being inside his domain is feeling like being in the palm of his hand, comparing it to Unlimited Void as a guaranteed victory. However, this technique becomes even stronger as Mahito was able to activate a domain of 0.2 seconds whilst using his curse technique in a single step, making its speed even faster. Even Sukuna, the king, was impressed by this evolution as Mahito avoided touching his soul, and his speed at using the technique matched the strongest, where Yuji would have instantly died before Sukuna could even switch with him. As a result, Mahito successfully used idol transfiguration against Todo without even touching him. This is way more OP than you think. In chapter 223, we are told the skill of a sorcerer is ranked by their ability to reduce and shorten the steps of using their curse technique. This means Mahito's power was up there with way more potential since his evolution increased everything to 200%. But this segue allows for me to put Todo's Boogie Woogie as another honorable mention, and that helped kill Mahito, right? It was so powerful that someone like Sukuna said it was impossible to adapt to. It's basically Sasuke's Rinnegan on steroids, being able to spam instant teleportation 50 times in a moment, leaving everything unpredictable. Think about it. Todo managed to save everyone from Sukuna's domain. He helped kill all of the major antagonists like Kenjaku, Mahito, and let Yuji do his left-right goodnight to beat the ass out of the king. However, going back to the top 10 strongest curse techniques is Yuta's copy. It gives him a massive arsenal of techniques that can counter anyone that he's facing once he deduces their weaknesses. It gets even stronger in his domain, where he can even select one of his copied powers to be imbued in the domain's guaranteed hit and target only one specific user of his choosing. This is a feat where Yuta earned the respect of Sukuna. For example, let's say he's facing Ryu. He can make it so that sky manipulation would render his granite blast useless, like when he redirected it into the air, having fulfilled the conditions when Rika ate Uru's arm. So, like all anime verses, the concept of a copy ability is always overpowered, as Yuta can make the techniques even more powerful than the original due to his high curse energy reserves. He can replicate without restrictions or binding vows. All he needs to do is make Rika devour some body parts of his opponent. Yuta can swap between techniques, making him more versatile and unpredictable to the opponent to deal with. For example, curse speech worked effectively against Sukuna, but when Unumaki did it, his whole throat was destroyed. They even confirmed in chapter 269 that Unumaki would have died if Sukuna wasn't nerfed. Also, Yuta's copied Jacob's Ladder was more powerful than Angel, making it a maximum output. Chapter 263 reveals that the opponents don't stop to think of the possibility of the original power appearing, thus giving Yuta two of the same cards in the sorcerer's hands, which would bamboozle them in a strategy. However, copy is completely useless without Rika. She functions as an external storage for techniques and is necessary to consume their body parts to learn the technique in the first place. Also, the user's brain would be overloaded by multiple powers, so she is definitely required. Now, luckily for Yuta, she's a bit of everything. Not only is she a formidably strong curse spirit helping against Sukuna and has freaking energy blast, she has multiple uses of spamming the reverse curse technique to bring him back to life and is capable of replenishing his curse energy completely. Now, the only downside to this technique is that if the person uses RCT to restore the body part Rika weaker consume to copy it, the technique is no longer usable. And the stronger the power they want to copy, the bigger the cost is required. Now, if the technique is too strong, Yuta can just circumvent for that, doing a binding vow limiting his uses of the technique, but he still gets to take it. So essentially, any of the strongest curse techniques we're gonna mention in this video as the top 10, Yuta can just copy them. Well, except for Limitless, since you require the 6 eyes. Now, how can we talk about the strongest curse techniques and not rank the freaking king? Sukuna's shrine is what makes him a menace to society. He can send 2 different types of invisible slashes to his opponent that can shred anything in front of him. So you won't even see your death coming unless you possess special eyes like Gojo, Kashima, or Maki. Cleave is used against stronger opponents as it scales based on the opponent's curse energy level and their toughness. We saw that Gojo had to use RCT at full throttle just to deal with this technique, as it could hurt him at maximum output. We see it casually cut a skyscraper in half with 1 slash and destroy a whole town within a 200-meter radius. So unless a sorcerer bolsters their durability with energy reinforcement or weakens the slashes with simple domain or amplification, Dismantle could easily cut them apart in one swoop. This is confirmed with Yuta and Yuji admitting that even after cheating in the 1-month time skip to gain a multiple power increase to tie in their defense, they all would have lost instantly against Sukuna's technique if it wasn't for Gojo nerfing him. However, even if Sukuna touched them, they would still die, just like Ryu did, who boasted the highest energy output in history. Even Yuta's blast at point blank range against Ryu didn't kill the dude. But it doesn't end there, as another power of Shrine is Dismantle, and in his domain, Sukuna uses both of his techniques, Cleave and Dismantle, continuously, slashing Mahoraga before it could adapt to it and officially be the first person to destroy the Shikigami. This technique is completely hacks for this verse, because the world cutting slash that cuts reality and space itself, it game ends everything. There is absolutely no counter to this in the Jujutsu Kaisen verse. The only option is for you to dodge it like Maki did, or cut Sukuna's arms off to stop the requirements to do it in the first place. But it doesn't stop there, as there is a third variation of Shrine. The divine flames are so strong that it even killed a curse like Jogo, who was literally based on volcanic destructive disaster fire. Now, a stronger version of this was used during the domain. This was a much bigger nuke than what Gojo did with Hollow Purple. This transforms the dust particles into thermobaric explosives, generating a force around 44 tons of TNT. It causes instantaneous high temperatures, shockwaves, decompression, and intense pressurization with no chance to escape. No anti-domain technique will work, as we see him obliterate the entire area and everyone would have died inside regardless of them using simple domain. Todo even claims in chapter 269 that since Yuji and Choso were in the center of the explosion, the high output from Sukuna made it difficult to target him with Boogie Woogie, which resulted in Choso's death. So apart from Yuki's black hole, this attack is the strongest and most destructive power we have seen in Jujutsu Kaisen. But on the other hand, Yuji awakened his own version of Shrine, which is arguably stronger than Sukuna's regular one, as he developed Soul Dismantle. His unique power of attacking the soul leads to Sukuna losing control of his body and diminishing his curse energy output. This allowed for everyone to keep fighting, just as Choso claimed in chapter 256. So with the help of a binding vow, Yuji's shrine can harm a person's body and soul, while Sukuna can only do physical damage, which can be healed way more easily, as we know. This forced Sukuna to vomit out his fingers, and the king even admits that Yuji can kill him, as his domain expansion sure hit effect had Soul Dismantle on it, and it won in the end. So like the world cutting slash, in a way, Yuji's Soul Dismantle has also barely any counters to it. Now, if you were concentrating, you can tell what is going to be the next strongest curse technique in the series. We have another special grade sorcerer's curse technique, and that is Yuki's Star Rage. Using this power, she was able to go toe-to-toe against Kenjaku, calling Yuki a wild beast that cannot be tamed, gaining his acknowledgement. This was only possible since she can add virtual mass onto herself without reducing her speed in the process. Now, along with her trusty sidekick Shikigami Garuda, Yuki can add her virtual mass to it and convert it into a curse tool. This move itself was able to one-shot one of Kenjaku's strongest special grade curse spirits, meaning Yuki can take on multiple special grades without breaking a sweat. Even just by adding virtual mass to herself, she was able to punch Kenjaku so hard that his hand split in two. The impact sent Kenjaku flying so far that he punctured the circular definition of the empty barrier that they were fighting in. Other people like Choso didn't have enough power to even pierce the dude. And look at Momo, Miwa and Mai being absolutely useless against Kenjaku. So Tengen put it best. You can't put Kenjaku as a normal caliber sorcerer. Even his simple domain is astronomically higher than a normal person. Everything he does is insane, where he could do a divine domain. Yeah, that doesn't matter. As Kenjaku admitted, Star Rage was a bad matchup for him. However, the reason this curse technique is ranked in the top 10 is because it has the power to destroy the whole world, as Yuki can literally add unlimited mass to a certain point in space that can create a black hole that would devour everything. Which brings me to another honorable mention, as even someone as strong as Kenjaku would have died if not for Kaori's anti-gravity curse technique that protected him. If you add reverse curse energy to this power, it becomes a completely new ability called gravity, which stopped Choso's supernova with ease and Yuki's abilities to do much more. Now, next up on the list of the top 10 is construction. And no, not this weak ass technique that Mai uses, but Yoruzu's. Yup, if you didn't know that, Mai and Yoruzu have the same curse technique. But since Mai was weakened due to heavenly restriction, we see the best use of this power from Yoruzu. Based on her training, she can recreate any substance she recognizes except for special curse tools. And just through her years of experience as a veteran sorcerer, she was able to recreate liquid metal with a changeable volume but stable physical properties. Now you might be wondering, ABD, this seems so basic. Even Mai could do this and run out of curse energy with just 2 constructions a day. And all she could do was create a bullet. She's trash. Well, Yoruzu did have this problem in the start, since construction was extremely energy inefficient. But along with her high curse energy reserves, she used her brains and realized that insects can do things that are beyond human comprehension, like lifting several hundred times their weight limit, their bites are extremely strong, and they fly at incredible speeds. So Yoruzu constructed the ultimate insect armor with all those capabilities which allowed for mid-range combat. Now if you didn't know, she made a name for herself in the time period when the strongest fighters boasted incredible powers. This armor alone allowed Yoruzu to defeat the 5 empty generals of the Heian era, including the Sun, Moon and Star squad that Uru headed. Even against Sukuna, Yoruzu was able to tank multiple attacks from the 10 shadows like the Ox, and even had a big ass 9-ton elephant dropped on her head and she still survived due to her armor. But the reason this technique is ranked in the top 10 is due to the perfect sphere, something that is said to be physically impossible as it doesn't exist under normal circumstances. A true sphere has no contact area, and so it can infinitely generate pressure, meaning the sphere has a literal one-shot ability inside of it, especially in her domain with a short hit effect. The only reason she lost is because she faced the king himself, who allowed Maharaga to adapt, and Sukuna already knew the function of her technique and everything that it does. Any other sorcerer would have been completely toast against Yoruzu at this point of time. But speaking of becoming toast, Mythical Beast Amber is gonna do just that to your opponent and yourself. It's the technique of the strongest sorcerer from 400 400 years ago, Kashimo. He's able to reconstruct his entire body with electricity using curse energy. This includes improved agility due to the increase in the activity of the brain's electrical signals. That means his body can manifest into many different electricity attacks, like doing a thunderous roar that blasts Sukuna with a sonic wave, transforming his hands into sharp claws, and unleashing electromagnetic waves in the forms of energy beams directly from his freaking palms. It's very versatile and has massive potential if he had more time to be explored, especially since Kashimo could fire off a discharge of electricity that's a guaranteed hit without the need for a domain expansion, whilst also gaining X-ray vision in this form. This technique is so powerful that it enhances all of Kashimo's capabilities, making him essentially superhuman. And as we all witnessed, he forced Sukuna to transform into his Heian era form. Now before we joke around saying, bruh, he got bodied by Sukuna too easily, Kashimo's trash. No, I don't agree. I think he is top tier. While his curse technique was activated, he blitzed him and had the upper hand the entire time until the divine form came out. We get it, right? But his biggest feat yet, even though he was warned, which seems like disrespect, he still dodged the first world cutting slash Sukuna threw at him, something that Gojo wished he had done. Kashimo, in his base form, just think about it, base form Kashimo is special grade in my eyes. Having the title of strongest 400 years ago with no defeats isn't something simple, right? He almost kills Hakari several times without the mythical beast Amber. The only reason Hakari survived and won is because his RCT from his domain is stronger than Sukuna and Gojo. Plus, he got the jackpot multiple times being lucky. So in my eyes, Kashimo definitely is in the top 10. But ranking the strongest techniques, it's pretty difficult. You might be wondering, where is brain hopping, Judge Man, Urame's ice formation, or even Hakari's idle death gamble? Well, Judge Man doesn't compare, as it's basically 1/10 of the 10 shadows, since Higuruma's curse technique is summoning the Shikigami. The domain can give you the executioner's blade capable of killing anything it stabs, but unfortunately, it has heavy drawbacks which make it kinda bad. Remember, the crime is selected at random, and there's so much yapping behind this technique that you guys are gonna fall asleep. Even Higuruma didn't know how it worked. The opponent can also lie to be innocent in court, stopping you from gaining its power. Or if they have a cursed tool, that would be confiscated in priority instead. Brain hopping, on the other hand, seems to be a pretty strong technique, since it makes you borderline immortal. However, it does have its drawbacks. Firstly, in its base, you won't be that strong. You would have to find a target and scheme to gain their body first. Then, you would need immense knowledge of Jujutsu in the first place, since the technique has to be active at all times. As Yuta proved that when he took over Gojo's body, he shut down instantly due to burnout. Kusakabe even said the 1,000 years of experience is what made this power strong, as he was separating multiple techniques intentionally via some barrier method. As Yuki confirmed that no brain can handle multiple powers and would overload. However, given that Kenjaku was just behind Tengen in being the absolute best of all time in barrier techniques, he was able to pull it off. So that means you won't even be able to use multiple powers unless you figure out the trick, which even someone as talented as Yuta couldn't. Yeah, we can argue that brain hopping gives you the host curse energy, all their innate techniques, and even their memories. But remember, you need to read all of it to learn the use of the new power you gain just to be proficient at it. Mind you, who's gonna do the surgery to replace your brains with each other for you? All in all, I would definitely say Kenjaku with his insane knowledge made this technique really overpowered, and it is in the top 10. But let's say you're an average sorcerer and you got it. It's not worthy. But what about Hikari and Urame's curse techniques? Well, they were busy smashing and equalizing for 30 minutes in a draw. On top of that, the dude was lucky gaining 8 jackpots in a domain. His actual technique itself isn't that great. However, Urame's frost was capable of stopping awakened Maki and all the others in the Shibuya incident. So if we saw more of this power, I think it could have been one of the strongest techniques in the verse, worthy of being in the top 10. Oh, and we can't forget about Jacob's ladder. It would be completely broken if Angel just possessed any other person's body other than useless Hana. I mean, this technique could one-shot the king, but how many times did they try and fail? 3? Sukuna and Yuji tanked it whilst climbing the ladder with hardly any repercussions. Speaking of which, Jogo's Disaster Flames was a strong technique that had its own maximum version that could hurt Sukuna at 15 fingers if it had landed. But that's the thing, if it landed, it was too slow, not even being able to land on Panda for God's sake. Jogo was completely shafted by the strongest techniques on this list as I have explained so far, as it's not completely hacks that could break reality unlike the others. So to watch more peak fiction, check this video to learn more about Megumi and his true potential. How strong would he have become?